Hello, welcome to another episode of Daily Market Mastery with me, Christian Rauchenwald, on this cloudy Thursday afternoon. I hope you all had a great and successful trading week so far. As always, before we jump into the markets, let's get the usual disclaimer out of the way first. Everything that I share in this live stream / video is my personal opinion and in no way financial or professional advice of any kind. You should always do your own research, consult certified professionals, draw your own conclusions, and make your own decisions. Besides that, as always, all the tools that I'm using, so the broker, the charting software, the strategy I'm following, and so on, are all linked in the video description down below. So if you haven't done so, the one thing I recommend is follow the link in the description down below to check out the Elliott Wave principle, which you can read online for free when you're using the link in the description down below. Or you can use the same link to get yourself a physical copy like I did. With that out of the way, let's jump right into it. And just need to get the right window to pop up. 1 second. That, and push a button here. And hi Olga, hi everyone else that's watching, lurking, and joining us. We have again a break-even day with a slight red start. I mean, again, very small amount, so -60 for the opening. Our Barnes & Noble education order hasn't triggered. There are a few things that happened since the end of yesterday's stream that I noticed despite doing a gazillion other things. First of all, let's look into the chart, and the first thing we can look at is Novavax, where we actually got a decent upwards movement here that on first glance on the 8-hour chart looks like it could be wave 1, 2, 3, 4, maybe not finished yet, and then followed by wave 5 upwards, which points towards or gives us two possibilities. Either wave 4 indeed ended down here, and this is in some way the next 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. So we would be in a third wave, of a third wave, of a third wave, of a fifth wave. Or we indeed had a triangle play out here. I'm not fully happy. On one hand, it follows or adheres the rules of a contracting triangle quite well. In case or in the point that we have the wave E here getting close to that line. However, usually we would expect wave E to briefly dip below here and then go up. So I'm not fully convinced yet, or I'm not 100% certain which way I prefer here, if I either label this as wave 4 here and we are already in the next impulse up, or if potentially wave 4 has its orthodox end here. And we are now in the next impulse up. Either way, it shouldn't make much of a difference, unless I'm completely wrong. That's obviously also always an option, because unless I'm completely wrong, we indeed now have wave 1, 2, 3, 4, and are now in wave 5. And if we are here indeed in wave 5, we should see the $30 to $60 areas over the next couple of weeks and months develop, which would obviously be quite nice. Now, personally, I only hold one call option that expires in January in Novavax, and it's a $20 call option, so we should go at least slightly above 20. I paid $95 premium for that option, so we need to go a little bit more than 20 for that option to be in profit. If we reach the $30 mark, which is the predicted minimum target area for that fifth wave move, unless again I'm wrong completely with the entire pattern, then the option would pay out like 1 to 10. And if we actually reach the maximum target at 60, well, then it would pay off a little bit better. Now, obviously, we're not talking about fortunes here because I only got one option and didn't risk a huge amount. But it still would be a nice trade overall. That's one thing that happened since yesterday, or since our stream yesterday, and that is this nice candle here. Moving on to Barnes & Noble, where we are still waiting for this here to happen. We have a pending order to buy a very small amount of shares. I think it's, 20 shares at 8.45. We're going to see, so I mean, technically we could already be done with the downwards movement here. We're going to take a closer look again at the last move here that might subdivide as 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 here or here. Not sure if those overnight values are even valid. Either way, should then be followed by a last push down. If we go higher than, what do we have here, 974, then I likely, in quotes, miss the entry. And zooming out again, and should just enter here. if we stay below 974, so I still consider it most likely, considering how many different guidelines and rules and forecasting methods that I'm using and so on are pointing towards that same area here. I still consider it likely that we're going to see anything between $8 and 842.37. That's why my entry is at 845. Now, if I would consider, or if I would have more available capital right now to allocate for that position, I obviously would split it up in tranches over that area here, maybe even with a small tranche below the $8 mark a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be interesting. We should see it play out maybe even today or tomorrow already to see if we are going to reach the 845 or if we are not going that low and already done here. And once, or if we reach the 845 mark and I actually get to grab a few shares, then the question is going to be, are we going to go further down, or am I right? And this here will mark the bottom of this corrective pre-wave move. Moving on to NEO. I know today we have a little bit of a different order. Why we're moving on to NEO? Because yesterday we sold our NEO shares, the few that I had, at an acceptable profit. Again, small amounts, but acceptable percentages, because it looked like we finished our fifth wave move here. And while we didn't sell at the top, yeah, nobody's perfect. It looks like we got out well enough. Now, there's still the chance, one has to consider that there's still the chance that this here is turning into a bigger ABC pattern, and then we'll get another push up. But for now, on first glance, it looks like we finished at least 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 might still be coming here, yeah. But considering that we reached the wave 5 target that we usually would expect, even the second target area, so that would be our minimum target based on this assumed wave 3, 4. We get our minimum target here that we broke through like butter, and that would be our usual maximum target that we rarely exceed, or yeah, in my experience, rarely exceed. And since we also shot through here but then bounced, there are on that 8-hour chart, there are multiple options. This could be ABC, and we're in the progress of seeing the next 5 waves up. Unlikely. This is wave A, this is wave B, and we're currently seeing wave C, and then we go further up. Possible. I consider, however, that we bounced on the 538.2 extension level of this bigger wave 1, 2. I consider it most likely that we're looking, so like I mentioned it in yesterday's episode, that we're looking at 1, 2, and this is now our finished wave 3, and we're actually going to see our 4th wave, which should be a, yeah, I'm not going to say a bigger correction, but a bigger correction, yeah, so there I said it, that basically corrects this entire 3rd wave and should take us down to at least 584, which would make our exit yesterday actually good. Now, it's possible I'm wrong, we go up further, but either way, even if we go a little bit up further, we should then get a 4th wave correction, because the pattern here, at least to me, clearly is wave 1, 2, 3, and we should get a 4th wave then. Obviously, if we first go higher, so if we would go here, then it also means that the minimum retracement that the correction should make moves up a little bit, but overall I still think that yesterday's exit was okay. The question is going to be, will Barnes & Noble Educational, let's reload the data here just to make sure, will Barnes & Noble Education actually also hit my predicted levels and then turn around, or will that pending order not trigger at all? I probably should add a second 974, so should add a second alert. Potentially missed entry 974. Okay, yeah, so if we go higher than here, then I potentially missed the entry, because then clearly we already finished the wave that's happening here at that point. And if we go here, then our order triggers, and then we basically are happy, and we would then have to only worry at, we can actually also create one here at the $8 mark. Why so low? Yeah. So that's the mark that we could see but shouldn't see, in my opinion. But yeah, with that, we already covered a bunch of things today. It's really going to be interesting if this is going to happen as well, and if NEO is going to follow my prediction here. While it opens with minus 4% today, the question will be, will it continue and actually start the correction here down to 584 at least, potentially lower, but that would be the minimum that we would have to retrace, in my opinion, or not. All of that said, I'm gonna enjoy a sip of my coffee. Now, going a little bit off topic. So I'm gonna start to go a little bit off topic during those streams. So it's not just me racing through the charts and sharing whatever I think, but to also provide some other aspects or insights into things that I'm doing. So as I mentioned in some of the previous streams, I set up this new Unraid server here. Yeah, so that home server that basically now is going to replace our Google Drive, or already kind of replaces our Google Drive. I just haven't removed the data from Google Drive yet. Want to verify the backup routines first. And as part of that, I also started a new blog. I can actually share it. So, which is hosted on that same Unraid machine. Yeah. So just 1 second. That's the blog. Wrong, almost. I'm not sure if I mentioned it that I started the blog, but the reason for the blog was basically I anyway needed a way to document certain things. So how I'm setting up certain things, or which settings are important in case I ever am going to set up another server using Unraid, or for some reason have to redo the setup, or maybe I just don't remember fully how I set something up. Yeah, and I discovered that a lot of things that I need, there might be video guides out there that partially are outdated, or it's just frustrating to watch them, because if in a video you see you have to enter I don't know how many characters or copy how many characters from a specific comment, it's much easier to copy that from a blog post. So I started that, and because yesterday on Reddit, I noticed a blog post that was asking if some people are actually making money with their self-hosting. I wanted to write a comment on Reddit that explains like what I'm doing with my Unraid system to actually, in quotes, make money. But then I couldn't post that comment for whatever reason. Reddit was throwing an error. So I decided to just write a blog post about it. And actually I did that today. Didn't take that long to just cover a few of the apps that I'm running on Unraid to basically earn a little bit of, in that case, for example, crypto. So running a Mysterium node earns us around, let's say, optimistically $50 per year in Mysterium tokens that personally I'm hodling, but that I could also just sell every time I receive them. Running Pawns app, which earns us, I don't know, like really hard to judge. I mean, there are some recent payout screenshots, but basically this year so far, $120 from Pawns app, but in that case, some of it or a decent amount of that comes from our referrals, which we get paid in Bitcoin or partially sometimes to a PayPal account, depending on what I prefer. And then we're running Honeygain, where maybe I can improve that section a little bit and add a few more screenshots, where we're actually mostly thanks to referrals made so far around, as I mentioned here, close to $5,300 since I originally discovered the project, with roughly $150 to $200 per month that we get from running that app, but again, mostly from referrals, which basically works this way. Somebody signs up with our referral link, they get paid for sharing their internet bandwidth, and we also get a small percentage from whatever they earn. So it's not like they have to pay something or so. It's like kind of like somebody in the Philippines runs Honeygain on their iPhone or Android device. Yeah, Android is better in that case, and might earn, I don't know, $40 or $20 per month from doing so. Maybe less, maybe more, depends a lot on your location, supply and demand, how many people are running the app in your country and whatnot. Yeah, and we then get a small cut from that, paid on top for referring the user. So it's kind of like creating a win-win-win situation. So Honeygain operates a huge proxy server network that's based on personal IP addresses instead of data centers. The users that sign up get money from Honeygain, and we earn a referral commission for earning or telling people about that service. And then there are other things like StoreJ, which I'm going to set up again at some point, but had to shut down my StoreJ node so I could actually turn the Windows computer that I had into that current Unraid system, which, as we can see based on the payout history that I made with that node, comes down to let's say 200 to 300 euro per year in revenue for sharing 16 terabyte of storage, blah, blah, blah. And then obviously there's this new blog, which is also, whenever it's fitting, I throw in an affiliate link, like for the hard drives that I'm using, or in that case for Pawns app and Honeygain. Now I was sharing that post on the Unraid subreddit, and I have to say I was a little bit, I mean, I already expected some negative sentiment, because people that are in the Unraid subreddit and operate their own servers at home very often do that for privacy reasons, because they don't want to share the data with big data, Google and Amazon and whatever. And Obviously, many of them are then skeptical when it comes to crypto and so. But I have to say I was a little disheartened by the feedback I got, because many of them didn't even bother to properly read the article. That points out all the risks that are involved. That points out that my earnings are mostly, or a huge chunk of my earnings comes from referrals, and that obviously my earnings without referrals would be much lower, and so on. But yeah, so I have to say, like, it's sometimes a little disheartening. I get that people might have a different opinion. So, like, for example, with one guy that was actually pleasant in the comments, the discussion went towards, okay, if I would use the skill set that I have, that I use to set up those services, blah, 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 which is really easy to set up the services, by the way, especially if you just install the official apps on your Android phone, then I could earn whatever, $100 per hour or so. But I personally prefer to actually have recurring revenue. So I looked it up. I made a total of 7 videos, for example, that talk about honey gains. And the oldest one is 3 years old, and the last one is 1 year old. And I haven't published on my main YouTube channel, not that I'm proud of that, but I haven't published on my main YouTube channel for a couple of months already again, yeah. And still, every month we earn or receive $160 to $200 from honey gain alone, yeah. So creating those 7 videos took me probably 10 hours, but let's be generous and say it took me like 20 hours or so, which means so far we earned $5,300 from honey gain alone, which comes down to $265 per hour. Now that doesn't consider the time, I don't know, I dedicate to answering comments on YouTube and so on, yeah, but which is like during my morning coffee, I do it on the side. But it definitely beats working 53 hours and then having to work again to earn the next $100, because those videos are online. The referrals we have them, and as long as they earn money from Honeygain, they have no reason to stop using the app. And as long as Honeygain has paying clients that use those proxy services, they will earn money through Honeygain, and we will earn referral commissions, which means, like, I'm sometimes surprised by people focusing so much on the money that they can earn one time and underestimating how much they can earn long term. Now, obviously, when we started using Honeygain and when I made the first video about Honeygain, I don't know, it maybe took us a month or two to earn the first $20. Maybe it took even longer. I don't recall it, to be honest. Yeah. Now looking back, obviously it's not a full-time income. It's not even enough to pay rent in Germany or so. Yeah. But basically, Honeygain alone now, let's say $1,800 to $2,000 per year that we make from that service alone, now covers actually the cost of this entire computer and the ongoing electricity. So with the revenue from Honeygain, I could once per year build a system like this, and yeah, sell it or do whatever else I want with it. And that's all because I put in the 20 hours of effort. I mean, obviously it's not just the 20 hours of effort to create those 7 videos, but it's the entire hundreds of hours of efforts to create hundreds of videos to grow the YouTube channel in the first place. But my main point being is, like, personally, I will always prefer exchanging my ongoing effort to build something that will bring results long term. And even if the initial results are lower, that has the chance to actually bring me more as it goes or as time goes by, so that even if I don't know, if I'm sick for a month, if I just don't feel like working for a month, if whatever happens, that I know there's still revenue coming in. Yeah. Yeah, anyway, I don't know why initially I took that detour today, but yeah, now you know I have a blog and there's some interesting stuff about self-hosting and about some passive income stuff that I'm doing. So feel free to check it out. It's at blog. I'm actually going to share it. That probably makes it easier. So that's the blog, if you're curious. So it gives you some insight in some other parts of my life. And with that, we circle back to the trading part. Yeah. So again, Neo, yeah, I said, like, probably, I think I'm right, and we're going to see that correction. We're gonna have confirmation once we go below 644. Right now, it's still possible that this is another ABC pattern, and we actually will get a stronger push up here. So, but from the looks of it, from the levels that we reached, where we bounced and so on, I think it's gonna turn out that I'm right here, that this will be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we'll just have to keep an eye to determine the wave 4 target area once we have a little bit more data on the chart to figure out where a re-entry would make sense, or where it would make sense to maybe buy some longer term call options. Now, we covered Barnes & Noble. I'm gonna wait to see how it plays out, if I'm right here or not. Would be nice if, because then from here, if I'm right, we should have basically a third wave that then takes us relatively far, or it was a fifth wave, so like on the bigger picture. So 1, 2, no, it should be actually a third wave of a third wave, if I see that correctly, which means there should be quite some long-term and big upwards movement coming. Yeah, moving on, let's take a look at SMCI. As far as I recall, yesterday we also had some reasonable, no, actually that was something where we're not 100%, or where I'm not 100% certain, because on one hand it looks like a decent turnaround for an ABC pattern, and on the other hand we haven't reached the retracement levels that we would expect. So not much changed here. We just can wait and see to get more candles on the chart, which obviously will take weeks since we're looking at a 3-day chart here, and then make our decision based on that. No, chart will probably not load as so often, unfortunately. Will it not? Yeah, not loading. Yeah. Immersion, the waiting continues. We're still waiting for either distinctive move up to point out that's the end of the corrective pattern, A, B, C, or noticeable move down to point out, screw you, correction is not over yet. Yeah, I don't know. Based on the levels that we reached and where we are dumping around here, I think the upward scenario is the more likely one. But right now, still both options are on the table, so waiting is the name of the game. Anyway, we only have a small exposure there with 50 shares, so we're just gonna wait and see what happens. Yeah. From the top, what else did we miss? Grab. Yeah, we're looking at a weekly chart. While we have some strong move, we're still waiting for the breakout at 404. Actually, gonna create an alert here. 404 point in that case. Yeah. Yeah, on the downside, it's not worth considering because we're looking at it often enough to catch that. And immersion we covered. Costs, same thing. Yeah, like we're waiting for either the confirmation that this is the end of the correction, or so by stronger upwards move, for which we would have to break the 1055 to really have a confirmation, to be honest. So there's like, what's that, almost 50% upside, or that we first have to realize to have the confirmation, or break below the mark at 652 to point out no more correction incoming. So yeah, waiting there. NEO we already had, Novavax we had, NVIDIA, yeah, unchanged. So, or NVIDIA actually now looks like we get another wave up, so might have been wrong. And we actually got close enough to the level that we would expect, to be honest. So we thought, no, it's a tricky thing here. So if we either we just corrected this move, but then it would still be quite a lot of upside to come. I mean, with the naked eye, that could be A, B, C for a 3-wave corrective move. Yeah, it could also be a 9-wave corrective move, A, B, C, A, B, C, A, B, C. But either way, corrective move on the 8-hour chart. Yeah, and it's possible that we only corrected this, which then would mean that NVIDIA would have some very, very green days ahead. So there are like a few variations here that we can put on the chart. So first of all, it could be that this is, as said, my previous assumption that this is 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Yeah, all of that kind of checks out. Yeah, obviously would need to be a diagonal, so that warning is here because I used the impulse labeling. I'm gonna respond to that in a second. So just gonna finish NVIDIA, then we can look at Wheeler. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the warning here is because I used an impulse labeling. If I would have done like this, tools, and then here and pick the diagonal, then that error would not show up. Yeah, but that's one option. The other option would be somehow this is our entire wave 1, this is our wave 2, and we're now in a big wave 3. And within that third wave, we basically would be looking at something like wave 1, wave 2, and we're also within a wave 3. So if that's the case, we should see some very, very green days ahead. Yeah, so we will know relatively quickly I mean, we're on an 8-hour chart, so by end of next week, we should know, okay, that's the case. That would be option number 2. Option number 3, although the least likely one in that scenario would be, in my opinion, that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 not finished, and that in wave 5 we have basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In which case we also would get some strong moves here. I think that's the least likely one. I mean, there's still also the option that we have said finished 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which makes this wave 1, and we're currently in wave 2, and it's possible that even if we're correcting this entire move, that our wave 2 already finished here because we retraced pretty close to 38.2%, which is kind of the minimum retracement that we expect. In which case we also would expect a stronger 5-wave move now because we would be in a 3rd wave. As usual, we could use not an expansion but an extension. And we would have the first profit targets at 141 to 150, but the most common profit target actually at 178 to 187. Yeah? Not saying that I consider this likely, but that's also an option in the chart. We're going to have to keep an eye on it. If or when we break upwards of 127.67, we'll have to ask ourselves, is this the end of a 5-wave impulse? So 5-wave diagonal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Or is this somehow wave 1, 2, and we're now in the 3rd wave? So yeah, like, I mean, I hardly ever am invested in NVIDIA, but since it's very popular, it's interesting to cover. So yeah, quite an interesting move. I think it's caused based on their announcement that basically their AI material will be open source, which makes sense for them because they want to have more people or more companies work on their own AIs. Because they will need the NVIDIA GPUs and chips to make those AIs work and run. So therefore giving away basically so if you think about like gold digging in the past, giving away the treasure maps to sell the shovels definitely makes sense. So yeah, there is that chance, so we shouldn't underestimate it. Now Wheeler, if we look at it, the last thing, actually we got that spike up. Yeah, a little lower than I expected it would happen, to be honest. Like maybe I also misread that. Is it possible? Like just checking. Yeah, it doesn't change very much if we retrace from here, yeah. Quite a substantial move actually. So I mean 100%. Did not see that one coming. So like the moment I would have considered entering here between 9 and 8.17, yeah. So that was what I mentioned based on this ABC move, and it would have turned out, luckily enough, to be a very profitable move, yeah. But the moment we broke through the 61.8, it became a harder choice, because then it becomes harder to label. Yeah. Now the question really is like, is this now the finished correction? Or are we still in some kind of combinative corrective pattern that would take us further down? I mean, visually, again, on the 8-hour chart, if we look here, likely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we finished 5 waves up. So the next thing that should happen, we can actually move that one further back, I guess. Yeah. So like this is the next thing that should happen would be basically correcting this move here, going down to 14.25 at least, potentially to 10.70, and then from there at least see another 5 waves up, and then we'll see how far those 5 waves go. So I mean, there's an alternative option, but I mean, it doesn't make a huge difference that instead of that being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which I think is the most likely scenario, that actually that is somehow 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with the orthodox end of the wave here, because wave 5 doesn't always have to make a new high. And then here we would have our ABC correction, which probably also follows the rules quite nicely. So if we double check that, it doesn't make a huge difference in the overall outcome or in the overall forecast or so, to be honest. I don't know. the less likely scenario. I think that this is the likely scenario with one up, correction down. While we don't turn around nicely at one of the usual levels, yeah, and we go a little bit below the 61.8, we turn around in that area, and we now have what visually appears to be the next 5-wave impulse up. We're expecting a correction, and then we expect another 5-wave impulse up at least. Yeah, it's a little tricky because like only if or when we break the $35 mark, which is another 100% gain, would we have some kind of additional certainty that, okay, we are really in the next 5-wave impulse up. Yeah, overall, however, I still see upside here. So yeah, like if the pattern holds, there's also the chance that obviously since we're trying to label it from a potential bottom, there's also the chance that somehow we just surprisingly get our pattern invalidated. Yeah. I didn't know that you have a GmbH for trading, yeah? I looked into that, and while it's beneficial on your, so as far as I understand, obviously no professional tax advice here, yeah? Well, it's beneficial in terms of like lower taxes on your gains. I mean, at the end of the day, the moment you take out the money, you anyway have to tax it again. So kind of makes sense at a specific point then, where you might just pay yourself a salary on which you then pay your income tax and your, yeah, like, and you pay the health insurance from your salary. So considering living in Germany, and you just grow your assets in the GmbH further, but probably requires, I don't know, like, I mean, you probably have a bigger portfolio than what I'm playing around with here as well, yeah, but probably starts making sense at 100,000 if we consider the costs of having I'm not sure what the right word is, the yearly audit, so the Bilanz for the GmbH. Okay, so classic one, but you trade in there, yeah. Yeah, we only have our holding company, so which owns our foreign entities, as I mentioned in one of our previous streams, yeah. And technically probably could trade in there, but we don't have the spare funds to justify it right now. And if I were to do it, then I probably would want to do it in a separate GmbH. Yeah, I kind of like, I mean, it might not always make sense, yeah, but my personal preference is to separate things, even if sometimes again it might not make the most sense because it adds extra costs that could be avoided by combining things. But yeah, yeah, but again, I think it, like, I'm not sure if it would make sense for, so that of course, if I anyway already pay for the GmbH, then I could trade in there and I could enjoy the benefits of lower taxes on profits that are as far as stocks go. But that, for example, doesn't apply to options. So at least my understanding, yeah. So selling calls and puts to earn premium, no benefit there. And then added downside that once I take out the money or want to take out the money, I have to pay taxes on it. So you pay the regular taxes that you pay anyway, or that I would pay anyway if I trade the options personally. And once I take the money out of the GmbH, I have to pay extra taxes. So maybe I have a misunderstanding there, but from what I understand, it only makes sense for stocks, yeah. And the profits that you make there, and then also only, if I'm not mistaken, there's also the usual 12 months. If you hold your shares for a year, the gains are tax free. So it's kind of like, yeah, day trading and whatnot, or like short-term holds, GmbH, lower taxes on the gains. Yeah, I mean, that applies if you don't take it out. And obviously there are things that I can buy in the GmbH that I can, without cheating, declare as a business expense. If I need a new MacBook, if I need a new phone, but the moment, for example, I go on a vacation, again, not sure about German tax laws, and again, you know, I mean, you anyway know what you're doing, and you also have an accountant. But if it, for example, would be about travels, I just recall it from, since I had that conversation with a friend of mine that has a holding corporation and another one separately from it for his IT business in Austria. There, for example, is if you book hotels or stuff like that through the company only covers like what is the equivalent of a 3-star hotel. So if you book something above that, you actually still would have to consider the financial benefit and pay your income tax on the money that was used for it and whatnot. Yeah. So yeah, so at a certain portfolio size, I definitely agree with you. And until then, however, I don't really see the benefit. I mean, again, in the existing GmbH, you're probably right. Yeah. So my statement is really just in having a GmbH just for the sole purpose of trading, because then one has to consider the yearly costs of maintaining the GmbH. You have to make that at least in profit. Or actually your tax savings have to be at least that amount or higher to justify the GmbH. Other than that, I really don't mind having the trading going on my personal tax statement for now. But the long-term goal would actually be to have a separate GmbH for that. Yeah. And yeah, it might make sense. Yeah, like I mean, personally, I also have to say for me, it's probably that the last 2 years we spent with setting up the GmbH, getting everything structured with our foreign entities, dealing with multiple tax declarations and gathering so many piles of documents to have everything in order, that's just one thing I didn't want to deal with right now. And maybe you're right, maybe it would even be beneficial. But then again, like since my decision when I switched from eToro into Interactive Broker and from trading the Nasdaq with 20 times leverage to potentially trading a little bit more options, there was also the time when I looked into the trading GmbH setups and so on. Point was, there is no tax benefits for those gains. So sure, there would be a gain on the whatever $50 profit that I made with NEO yesterday. Yeah. So instead of 25-ish% or 27% taxes on those $50, it would be 1.5, as you point out. Yeah. But does that justify the extra accounting headache that I would have considering the size of the portfolio? So with a bigger portfolio, definitely, I think at 100,000 it would start to make sense. And then, however, I would definitely set up a separate GmbH for money management or so. Yeah, account opening is also another thing. I already had my portfolio set up, so going through the effort. Yeah, that I'm not sure of. So if they're, again, like from my understanding, this is basically option gains are different from regular holding the stock. So if I sell a put option, I receive premium, and the GmbH would have no benefit or offer no benefit from my understanding, at least, is like this.
Indexes and just stocks, if you trade indexes, it wouldn't be benefit for you.
Yeah, of course, because those are futures. And then anyway, the moment I trade with leverage, it's CFDs. It's really, again, something completely different. Yeah. But yeah, so if I like what I did since I opened the portfolio, so I sell I don't know, a $30 put for GameStop and get $600 in premium, then as far as I understand, there is zero tax benefit for the GmbH, because I still will have to pay the same tax on those $600 that I would have to pay, or that I will have to pay that now that I did it in my personal finance, whatever. Then I get the shares assigned and I own the 100 shares. Yeah, then if those shares then increase in value and I sell them with a profit, then of course there would be a tax benefit on whatever profit I make. But since I'm trying to, in quotes, get the shares called away for the same strike that I got them assigned, there is technically no profit. So I only end up with the premiums that I earned, and there the tax will be the same as far as I understand in the GmbH and personally. And with the downside, the moment I actually want to personally use any of the money that I got in the GmbH now, I will have to pay taxes on that again, either in form of income tax because I pay myself a salary, or in form of Körperschaftssteuer or Kapitalertragssteuer, whatever, whichever it is. So another 25% tax on the money that I take out or so. Yeah, I didn't know that Interactive Broker has an more, yeah, but when you sell a put, you get taxed 30%, but when you get assigned the stock, now when you sell a call, you get taxed on the premium with 30%, but when you sell your stock, yeah, but only if you have profit after that. So I sell the put, I get taxed 30% on the premium. So, and then I have the shares, and then I sell the call at the same strike price, for example, because I'm wheeling. Then I get them called away. Then technically there is no profit on the shares, and there's only 2 transactions with premium. And the result would be that in the GmbH I'm actually worse off because I have to pay for the accounting of the GmbH. Even if it's automated, you might have I mean, depends on the deal you have with your Steuerberater, so with your accountant and so on. Yeah. Again, I'm not saying that it's bad, and I think that starting at 100,000 portfolio size or maybe close to it, yeah, it makes sense. But for the 10-ish thousand that are in my portfolio right now, I think it would just add extra headaches for me. If we wouldn't have had to deal with a gazillion different tax issues and company setups and whatnot over the last 2 years, I would probably also be more willing to jump through whatever hoops that would cause. But the way it is, it actually right now just, yeah, wasn't an option, or it wasn't an option. I actively decided against it. Yeah. Yes, but again, if you're wheeling, you are okay with selling them at the same strike price. So you actually would want to free up your capital to sell puts again, because puts usually tend to have slightly higher premiums compared to the calls. And yeah, like, so again, I see the benefit for stocks, and but I only see it for a high enough portfolio size. Yeah. So. And benefit might also be maybe if you have some kind of margin account, but on Interactive Broker, the proper margin account requires around 100,000 in capital as well, so that you actually have some kind of line of credit that's that's noticeable, so that you then actually have the limited risk through the GmbH. So if you somehow manage to blow up the account, Interactive Broker cannot sue you personally, although I would assume that when you open your GmbH account, they might require you to sign an agreement that states that you're also personally liable or so. I don't know, maybe not, maybe they do, maybe not. Yeah, so my point is, I think it really starts to make sense at 100,000. Now that's not a number set in stone. It might make sense with 50,000 already. It also depends on your returns, of course, how active you can trade. If you try to do this for a living and you have a certain return, yeah, then obviously if you can dedicate more time to it, so if it's not like me spending 30 minutes to maybe an hour per day on managing the portfolio, but you actually have like your 4 to 8 hours per day that you can spend to manage your portfolio, then your returns should be bigger, because you can make short-term trades instead of like more longer-term outlook positions. And then it might make sense with a lower portfolio size as well, maybe with 30,000, maybe with 50 or so, but I think with 10,000 it definitely makes no sense whatsoever, considering that, I mean, again, already depends, do you have an existing GmbH or not? But if it's setting up a new one, and we talk about like 2,000 euro cost just to get it set up, that's basically burning 20% of the available capital just to have the structure to then save 25-ish% in taxes on stock gains. But yeah, like the long-term goal would actually be to have the trading in a separate GmbH, but for that the portfolio will need to be bigger, yeah, or we just accumulate enough money in the GmbHs from our other business ventures that I say, okay, I'm gonna set up a new portfolio with part of that money or so. Yeah. I use cash account with both. Yeah, I had it set to cash account first as well, but the switch to margin was required because otherwise, if I'm not mistaken, you cannot sell puts or there are some other option trades that you cannot make with that. And so I specifically made the decision to switch it. I'm not really using margin because my positions are always within the amount of cash and liquidity that I have. The goal, however, would be to get the portfolio into the 6 figures eventually, to get a proper margin account, simply to be able to do more moves. Where did you get that? Yeah, that's to right now. Yeah. Anyway, moving on. So it's cool that you have those things already set up, to be honest. Yeah. So like in so many aspects there, you are where I want to be. Even though, yeah, like, I mean, situations is different, and that's why for you it probably already made sense, and that's why you have it like this. And for me personally, I just consider it like an extra administrative headache right now. Even if maintaining it might not cause a lot of extra work, but I prefer not to right now. And from the expense perspective, as said, like I rather keep the trading outside because it allows me to make some money personally on the side that we can use right now without having to consider, okay, how many taxes will I have to pay if I withdraw it from the company, or pay myself a higher salary and then have more in Lohnsteuer and more in Krankenversicherung or health insurance, yeah. So more income tax, more health insurance, and yeah. Anyway, moving on. So Wheeler, as said, based on yesterday's streams, slightly surprised that we went up from here because we broke those levels. But on the other hand, actually, an entry here wouldn't have been bad. And that was what if I recall correctly, what I've been saying the last couple of live streams, that based on the looks of it, this will be the turnaround area. So we went a little lower than that. We actually went 20% lower. No, what's that? Yeah, 25% or 20% lower than that. But from there, we suddenly saw 100% gain that I personally missed, but others apparently enjoyed. Moving on. I'm not 100% sure, so I'm not gonna dispute that. My understanding is that cash secured puts also require the margin account, which are not naked, because you have the cash to buy the shares, which is the whole purpose of a cash secured put. But I might be wrong, yeah. For me, I don't know, like I saw that, okay, if I switch to a margin account, I don't really have any added downside in my opinion. And I can get all the trading permissions, which is something, while I don't need most of them, it was something that I wanted to have done. So like a small achievement thing to actually, not sure if it's visible or where it's visible, somewhere in permissions, yeah, I guess. That's in settings, I guess. And then somewhere trading permissions, yeah. Oh, I have one missing, yeah. So pretty much, so warrants are missing and the rest is pretty much unlocked. But yeah, like if it also works in a cash account, then definitely easier, better, or yeah, makes no difference as long as, I don't know, margin account, as long as you don't actually actively use up to level 3 options. Okay, so level 4 is the part that requires the margin. Okay, yeah, well, then that's the case. Where is that option level? Naked calls, short straddles, short strangle, short synthetic, calendar spread of credit calendar spread, and diagonal spread long leg expires first on level 4, yeah, and short put. Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I said I don't really see a downside. I mean, it would be a downside if I would actually use the little bit of margin that comes with that small margin account, yeah, and then suddenly the portfolio drops and then you get liquidated. But other than that, I don't think it's making a huge difference. There might be some other aspects that I'm missing right now, but yeah, let's move on a little bit. So SPY, not much changed since yesterday. Here also the question is going to be, we see that this looks like a three wave move, down, up, down. And the question is going to be if that actually will be the entire correction. So we only have been correcting maybe this move here, and we'll get another push past the 100% target mark that we have here. Or, I mean, which would fit, then it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, and then a wave 5 push. Or that's just the beginning of the correction. We'll actually are correcting the entire 5-wave move. So it's similar to NVIDIA in that aspect, where we also have a similar constellation of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and other potential variations. And looking at the NASDAQ, where it's probably similar still, yeah. So, oh, we didn't get any new data, yeah. Like I've been talking the last couple of streams without seeing new candles. That's a little bit stupid, yeah. So we need a new one, MNQ. So that one is probably the micro NASDAQ up. So there we won't get any additional data anymore. Remove, not the one I wanted, but let's see what we get. Slightly embarrassing that I did not notice that we didn't get new candles on the chart, and yeah, but that's the point. If I just briefly half an hour per day dedicate to the whole portfolio, then it happens. Now I'm not sure if we'll get anything to load here. We can look at NDX instead. So while we don't have overnight futures data in there, at least we have some data to see the patterns. Well, if we get some candles to load, there we go. Yeah, 15 minutes is a little bit excessive, so 8 hours. Oh, that's the same thing. So while our chart stops somewhere here-ish and we got another push, yeah, we basically, it looks different because there is no overnight data, so it's like everything is compressed, and we are missing some visual moves that we saw on, or that we can see on the other ticker. There's no data yet, yeah. So but the assumption would be similar. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then wave 5. So our target for that wave 5 would be based on this. And we can see that we reached the minimum target, but not the maximum target. And in here, it's potentially 1, 2, 3, 4, or maybe 3 here, 4, 5. So again, question is, are we already done with this entire move and we are now correcting this whole thing here? So this whole 5-wave move, or what I believe is a 5-wave move, in which case we would expect to go down another couple hundred points. Or did we only correct, for example, this move here, in which case we already got relatively close to the 38.2 retracement, and from here could get another push up. Yeah, we're gonna have to keep an eye on that, and then we'll see. I'd still, as said, probably stay out of this, so stay out of the SPY, NASDAQ, and NVIDIA right now to see the further development. After all, we have some charts that offer promising patterns, so like Novavax and Barnes & Noble Educational and Wheeler Real Estate Investments. So although Wheeler, we missed the jump off, yeah, since we didn't get in at those levels, but again, based on how it looks like, there should be at least, after a small correction, at least another 5-wave push up. Yeah, although risk reward ratio is not as great right now, because we would have to put our stop loss at least down here, so we have like a 50% or more than 50% risk for an unknown reward level right now. Anyway, with that, I'm actually gonna call it quits. Today's stream, again, longer than expected. Still a bunch of other things to do. Olga, as always, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate your interactions and your opinions and knowledge. So like, there are a lot of things that you share that I don't know, forget, or never heard of. which I appreciate a lot. It's also nice that you are actually in Germany, so you have the same tax environment and legal environment like I do, which makes a lot of the things that you share relatable and more interesting than if it's some guy from some other country that would share things that I cannot apply at all. Yeah, I wish you a pleasant rest of the day and everyone else that lurked as well. And then see you again tomorrow, roughly 5 minutes before market opens, for another episode of Daily